How about it from Eric Harland? Renee Rosnes. Let's see, we're going to continue by playing a Herbie Hancock song. It's called Riot. Harland, Miguel Zenon, Payton. Thank you very much. This is Bobby Hutcherson's original composition for the band. It's called Imminent Treasures. Bobby Hutcherson, Hayward, Nicholas Payton, Joshua Redman, Miguel Zenon, Harland, Penman, and Renee Rosnes. It's really been a great pleasure. Thank you.
Well, I'm backstage at the Barbican Hall in London before the concert here tonight by the San Francisco Jazz Collective. Honoured to be sitting next to the great vibes player and a jazz legend, Bobby Hutcherson, and also a saxophonist who we'll be talking about in glowing terms in years to come, Joshua Redman. Hello to you both.
Hello.
Hello.
Joshua, can you start off by just telling me how this project came about, how the San Francisco Jazz Collective actually got off the ground?
Sure. Well, I've been working with the organization that sponsors the SF Jazz Collective, SF Jazz, and they brought me in to be the artistic director of their spring concert series. And around the time they brought me into the organization, they started to talk about wanting to put together an ensemble that would bear the organization's name, you know, because basically what they do is produce festivals and concerts, but they never had a band of their own that they sponsored and helped organize. And the thing that the kind of band that excited me the most, and that actually excited the organization the most, was this idea of having a composer's workshop, a band that would be dedicated to the creation and development and performance of new music, that would bring together jazz musicians from across the country, great jazz musicians and great composers, and to work on new music and to have the opportunity to develop that music and to develop the band sound in a rehearsal, in a workshop-like environment, instead of just immediately going out on the road and performing. We would have an incubation period.
Right. Well, if you're talking about the actual band and what makes it unique, the lineup, you've got 4 horns, piano, vibraphone, rhythm section. It is an unusual lineup. Can you tell us how that actually came about? Was it a question of thinking of those instruments and then choosing the players, or did you have specific players in mind and then you just brought them together?
It's a good question. Well, the first musician that we had in mind was Bobby Hutcherson. I mean, he was the first one that was asked, and when he agreed to do it, you know, that's when the band, I think, became a reality, you know, because it was really important for me and for I think other people at SF Jazz. It was really important that we had a real master of the music in the band, someone who could be our spiritual leader and our musical leader, and somebody who could really, you know, give us the perspective that we needed on music and on life in order to be a real band. So that was, you know, Bobby's participation was key. And, you know, of course it was about him playing the vibraphone and being the greatest living vibraphonist and marimbist, but it was also about him being just a masterful jazz musician. As far as the other instrumentation, you know, we wanted to put together a band that would have a wide variety of textural and sonic options for composers. You know, we wanted to make sure that there were enough instruments that would give composers the flexibility and the variety that they might need in order to create interesting sounds through the ensemble. But we wanted to make sure that it was not too large a band, because we didn't want to sacrifice the improvisational element. We didn't want to sacrifice the element of individual self-expression.
Bobby, as the greatest living vibraphonist and the person who's made this project happen, as Joshua has just explained, what's it been?
Nice.
He's saying all the right things. What's it been like for you to come into this situation and play?
You know, it's a heavy family situation that's going on. You know, and now that we've gotten into our 3rd year, it's really gotten really heavy. The seed has been sown and the tree is growing.
Right.
You know, I mean, they give me a lot of opportunity to just sit on top and put the cherry on top of the pie, you know, and that makes it really interesting, you know, because along with that, you can hear all the personalities come in and come out and come in again and then blend, you know, and then it's really a beautiful experience.
So you've got the interest in arrangements, interest in deployment of the personnel, and also there's the repertoire, which is split between what you call a modern master and original compositions by members of the band as well. So far we've had these cycles, these annual cycles, where you've celebrated the music of a modern master. We've had Ornette Coleman, John Coltrane, and I think you're just about to do Herbie Hancock. How do you choose the different masters that you're actually going to celebrate in terms of the music?
I mean, we started with Ornette Coleman. I think one of the reasons why he was the first choice was we almost wanted to bite off more than we could chew. I mean, we wanted to start this project out with a bang and really have the intense challenge and risk of tackling the music of Ornette Coleman, and not only tackling the music of Ornette Coleman, but tackling the music of Ornette Coleman in a very unusual format for his music, an octet. Because a lot of his music, especially his early classic compositions, were for small group without any harmonic instrument. After Ornette, we started talking as a band about different composers that we might do, and Coltrane was, certainly at the top of the list, as was Herbie Hancock, and next year we're going to do Thelonious Monk. And I think that because they're more recent in the history of jazz, I think their music has a more direct and immediate impact on the sound of jazz today. So in that sense, it's we're playing composers whose music is every bit as relevant as it was when it was first recorded and written.
Bobby, you must remember the controversy that Ornette Coleman caused when he hit the jazz scene in the late 50s and early 60s.
When I first met Ornette in Los Angeles, I was telling the guys about this. He used to have very long hair, and he told everyone that, and he was kind of playing like Bird, at the time, and he was saying that when you see my haircut, I'm coming out. That's it. And so all of a sudden we would be at all these jam sessions, and all of a sudden Ornette walked in and had his haircut, and we said, "Uh-oh, whoa!" Once you saw his haircut, you couldn't focus on anything else because you knew something else was going on. And we all knew each other. There was like a really bustling thing that was going on in Los Angeles at the time, and everybody was writing music. There was just everything was going on. There was around the clock jam sessions where you could just go and hear all these musicians forever. I mean, nobody ever went to sleep. And it was funny. A lot of people used to say, well, West Coast jazz versus East Coast jazz. But I tell you, an awful lot of important jazz musicians from the West Coast came to New York and changed the whole, I mean, Mingus, I mean, there, Ornette, there was,
They made their mark.
I mean, Dexter
well, yeah.
was out there, a lot of people forgot all about Sonny Clark, who came from, and came into New York and really caused a whole different sound and stuff. So,
and there were people like Harold Land as well,
Harold
who you played
Land,
with, who's a great musician.
Yeah.
Talking of collaborations, you also played with Herbie Hancock in the 60s, and Herbie Hancock is one of the modern masters who the SF Jazz Collective is celebrating as well. Can you tell me what Herbie tunes you're going to be playing tonight, in fact, because we don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
And you don't know either.
I made the set list last night and I can't remember. There are 6 Herbie Hancock songs that we're playing this year and that were arranged by Gil Goldstein. They are And What If I Don't, Maiden Voyage, Little One, Riot, Tell Me a Bedtime Story, and Actual Proof. And they represent, very different sounds and styles from very different phases in Herbie's.
It's a wide span of his career, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's one of the wonderful things about playing the music of Herbie Hancock is that you have so much variety to choose from. I mean, he was at the forefront of so many important, so many innovative movements in jazz.
Bobby, I can see you smiling and nodding in appreciation there at the mention of Herbie Hancock's name.
I was playing at Birdland, and Donald Byrd comes in Birdland with Herbie. He just came in from Chicago, and I'm playing with Al Graham, Billy Mitchell, and Donald Byrd says, "I'd like to have Herbie Hancock sit in with the band," and we said, Yeah, sure, great, you know. And he came up and he played, and I mean, it was a different. It was that different style, the very beginning, right. But you could feel something, and the light on his face, boy, you know, just the thrill of being, you know, 'cause, well, everybody was thrilled to be able to be up on the bandstand at Birdland, but Donald Byrd says, you better watch this young man. He's going to be something, and you could you could see it, you know.
And decades later, we're still playing his music. Well, thanks very much, gentlemen, for talking to me. Very much looking forward to the gig tonight. And I'm sure that you'll be back for SF Jazz 3 at some point in the future with another modern master.
This is our third year, so next year we'll have a SF Jazz 3 album out, hopefully, and that'll be our fourth year. Thank you for having us.
Joshua Redman, Bobby Hutcherson, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.